Hello there, and welcome. Tonight, you are invited to take a quiet journey back through time to a world long ago, where stone by stone and brick by brick, the towns of the Middle Ages slowly came to life. Let your eyes grow heavy, your thoughts grow soft, and your breath begin to slow. You're safe here. This is your time to relax, to rest, and to simply listen. Close your eyes if you like. Imagine the distant ring of a church bell echoing over rolling hills. Picture a misty valley where the first hint of a village is taking shape. Tiny figures moving like ants across the land, carrying timber, stone, and dreams of shelter. And now, let us begin. Long before cobbled streets and crooked chimneys, before church steeples rose above thatched rooftops, there was simply land. The choice of location was never random. It was thoughtful, almost reverent. Builders sought places with fresh water, a meandering river, or a natural spring. They looked for high ground, for defense and drainage, and for the land itself, soil that could bear the weight of stone and offer timber for beams, straw for roofs, and clay for bricks. And so, a patch of wilderness would be chosen. Sometimes a clearing in the woods, sometimes a bend in the river, always with quiet care. The first task was marking the land. Ropes were stretched, wooden stakes driven deep. The layout was humble at first, perhaps only a chapel and a few huts. But the plan, though simple, was strong, like the first heartbeat of a dream. At dawn, laborers would rise to the sound of crows calling in the trees and the creak of wooden wheels. They wore woolen tunics and rough linen, patched and faded. Their hands were calloused, their movements slow but sure. The first buildings were simple: wattle and daub walls, woven wooden slats coated with a mixture of straw, clay, and dung. Thatched roofs, carefully layered reeds tied with twine. As towns grew, timber frames rose tall, beams pegged and joined with quiet precision. Masons laid stone foundations. Brickmakers fired clay in smoky kilns. There was no rush, no urgency, just the rhythm of building, the gentle thump of hammers, the scrape of shovels, the murmured voices of men and women at work. A town grew not in days, but in generations. Once the first homes stood, humble and low, their thatched roofs whispering in the wind, pathways began to emerge. Not paved, not yet. Just trails at first. Dirt paths, worn by feet and carts, winding gently from home to chapel, from well to barn. And then, as the town grew, some of these paths were laid with gravel or wooden planks. Over time, cobblestones would arrive, uneven at first, set by hand, each stone carefully placed and tamped into earth. Streets were narrow, not by design, but by nature. They followed the land, they curved with hills, they bent around trees. A town's shape was more like a spider's web than a grid. Shops and workshops began to appear. A blacksmith here, a weaver there, the scent of bread wafting from a baker's door. And in the middle of it all, a square, open, broad, dusty, a place for meeting, for trading, for gathering on feast days. Every town needed water, not just to live, but to thrive. Some towns had rivers, others relied on wells. Deep, hand-dug shafts that reached the cool water hidden underground. Digging a well was a slow, quiet art. Wooden frames were built above the opening, and ropes and buckets lowered with care. Sometimes a pulley, creaking softly in the wind, would help lift the heavy water. People came with clay jugs, baskets lined with moss, or simply with their cupped hands. Water was drawn with reverence, clear, cold, life-giving. Wells were places of gathering, of gossip, of greetings, of soft songs sung while waiting one's turn. And in the evenings, as the sun dipped low, the last reflections would glimmer in the still bucket's surface. As towns grew larger, safety became a concern. Bandits roamed the countryside, and rival lords sometimes sought to claim more land. So slowly, stone by stone, a wall began to rise. It didn't appear all at once. It circled in sections, rough at first, then more solid, taller and stronger with time. Watchtowers were built at intervals, with narrow slits for looking out, and bell towers to raise an alarm. But within the walls, life stayed peaceful. The danger was more a memory than a presence. And so, from atop a tower, one might look out over the rooftops, thatched and tiled, timbered and aged, and beyond them, the fields, the forests, the quiet hills that rolled endlessly into dusk. The hum of craft filled the streets, not loud, but steady. The town's lifeblood was its workers, its makers, its guilds. Each trade had its place: the blacksmith's clang, the soft brushing of wool by the weaver, the scraping of parchment in the scribe's hall. And each guild had rules, quiet codes passed down, honored in handshakes and whispered oaths. Apprentices swept floors and fetched nails. Journeymen carried tools. Masters taught, guided, corrected, and praised. Shops bore symbols above their doors: a hammer for a smith, a comb for a wool carder, a boot for a cobbler. And together, through rhythm and care, they shaped the town not only with brick, but with tradition. And then came market day, slow and joyful. The quiet streets filled with soft footsteps and murmuring voices. Tents were pitched, tables unfolded, baskets of turnips, onions, wool, and eggs arranged with loving care. Children played by the cartwheels. Pigs snorted and hens fluttered. The air carried the scent of roasted apples and beeswax candles. Folk came from nearby farms and distant hamlets, greeting each other with nods, smiles, and gentle laughter. And on feast days, colors bloomed. Ribbons flew, drums thumped faintly, dancers twirled on soft grass, and bells chimed high above, but always gently. Never loud, just enough to stir the heart, not wake it. Time passed in circles, not by clocks, but by sun and season. Spring arrived first, gently. Snow melted into muddy paths, and green shoots peeked through the thawing earth. Townsfolk repaired roofs, cleaned hearths, and planted gardens with quiet hope. Summer followed, golden and long. Children played barefoot in dusty lanes, and farmers brought in baskets heavy with peas and herbs. The air was thick with bees and distant birdsong. Autumn turned the town amber. Leaves tumbled through the square, and smoke curled from chimneys as bread baked in stone ovens. It was a season of harvest, of storing, of gathering close. And winter, cold, still, deep. Snow blanketed rooftops, and the well froze at its edges. Inside, candles flickered and families sat near the hearth, mending clothes, telling stories, and waiting for the thaw. The town breathed with the seasons. It slept and stirred with the earth. At the heart of every medieval town stood its soul, the church. It wasn't always grand. In the earliest days, it might have been a small stone chapel, roofed with timber, its bell little more than an iron tongue ringing from a wooden frame. But even in its simplest form, the church was a place of stillness, of morning prayers and evening songs, of births remembered and lives laid to rest. Villagers passed by it daily, some to kneel, some to sit, some simply to feel the quiet comfort of its walls. Over time, the church grew, stone by stone, arch by arch, until its steeple reached toward the clouds like a finger pointing gently to heaven. Its stained glass, when there was any, caught the morning light and scattered it in colored pools across cool stone floors. And within, the scent of beeswax, the soft echo of footsteps, and the hush of sacred air. It was the keeper of stories, of records, of seasons and saints. And when the bells rang out, at dawn, at noon, at dusk, it wasn't loud. It was soft, familiar, like a mother's voice calling her children home. As the sun set and shadows lengthened, a warm glow would spill from a low wooden building near the edge of the square. The inn. Its shutters were drawn back, lanterns flickered gently within, and the scent of stewed meat, warm bread, and smoke welcomed any who wandered near. Travelers came here, pilgrims with dusty boots, traders with tired horses, minstrels with quiet songs folded in their throats, and always there was a place by the hearth. The inn was more than shelter. It was story and rest, laughter and sighs, a place where strangers might share a bench, a meal, a memory. Taverns, too, smaller and simpler, dotted the winding streets, homes with extra space where neighbors gathered at day's end. The clink of wooden mugs, the hush of firelight, the murmur of old tales told in soft voices. This was the music of the evening. Nothing loud, nothing hurried, just the comforting hush of a town settling in for the night.